Welcome back to my channel, everybody. Well, I decided it was time to do another top 10 list. So today I want to bring you my top 10 serial killer movies. But before I get into it, here on The Haunted Beard, it is all horror and thriller movie content coming at you. So listen, do not click that subscribe button unless you want to be haunted by the beard. Hey, real quick, there's going to be some movies that are not on this list that many people might consider to be serial killer movies that I just didn't even put in for consideration. Movies like Psycho or Scream or Halloween would technically be a serial killer movie, but I consider those first and foremost slashers and didn't consider them for this list. Now, before I get to my official top 10 list, I do have one honorable mention that I have to bring up. Now, this isn't explicitly a horror movie. In fact, it's really more of a dark comedy. There's a little bit of a crime thriller element, but it is more of a dark comedy. But it does still involve serial killers, and this is going to be an extremely unexpected choice because I'd be willing to bet the majority of you watching this have probably never seen this movie, maybe never even heard of it. But it is the classic from 1944, Arsenic and Old Lace, starring Cary Grant. And I absolutely love this movie. Cary Grant's performance in it is fantastic, and it tells the story of Cary Grant's character, who is just newly married, and he has these two aunts who, wouldn't you know, poison guys with arsenic. And so his two aunts, these sweet old ladies, are serial killers. And the whole thing, for the most part, takes place in one location over the course of one night, and it's fantastic. It also stars Peter Lorre, who is this doctor who performs these like back alley plastic surgeries. And Cary Grant has a half-brother who wants Peter Lorre to give him facial surgery to make him look like Boris Karloff. He also has another brother who thinks he's Teddy Roosevelt. It's just got some weird, wild, kind of creepy and twisted stuff in it. And it's all surrounded by these two old women who poison dudes with arsenic. And it's just fantastic. It is, like I said, very darkly comedic, but it does involve serial killers. And it is a very unconventional choice, and I absolutely love it. If you're in the mood for an old classic in black and white with some dark humor, check out Arsenic and Old Lace. All right, so now kicking off the official list at number 10, we've got Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, starring Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter, and directed by Tim Burton. This one takes place in London in the 1840s, so it's got just some great set design and production value to it. And of course, it tells the story of Sweeney Todd, a man who is hell-bent on vengeance and revenge against Judge Turpin, the man who killed his wife, played by Alan Rickman. Cast here is fantastic. The music is awesome. I think Epiphany is probably my favorite song in the movie. And this is almost like a black and white type movie. It's very, very muted and desaturated. So when you get the red blood splatters, they really pop. It's got great performances, great music. I think it's another unconventional choice. It's a serial killer musical. I mean, how can you go wrong with that? With Johnny Depp, Tim Burton, it's just all around great. And it's got some really gnarly, throat-slitting kills. It's good stuff. If you haven't seen it, of course, check out Sweeney Todd. Coming in at number 9, and this is another one I'd be willing to bet most people probably haven't seen, and that is M. And this is a German film from 1931. And this one also stars Peter Lorre, who is in the film Arsenic and Old Lace, and he plays serial killer Hans Beckert, who targets children. Yeah, this is a dark one, and don't let the 90-plus-year-old tag on this thing hinder you from watching it because it is fantastic. Now, I don't know this for absolute certainty, but if this isn't the very first serial killer movie ever made, it is certainly one of the very first ones. Peter Lorre's performance in this is really solid and creepy and, of course, memorable. We're still talking about it 90-plus years later. And there's also just some really good suspense building in here as well. It gets into a little bit of the police investigation. There's some good chase sequences as well. And the opening, like 8 to 10 minutes, basically presents itself as a silent film, and it is absolutely fantastic. Coming in at number 8 is from South Korea, I Saw the Devil. This came out in 2010, was directed by Ji-Woon Kim, who's directed a handful of other movies that I am a big fan of. Stars Byung-hun Lee and Min-sik Choi, who you may know from Oldboy. And this one tells the story of a secret agent who exacts revenge on a serial killer through a series of captures and releases. And believe me when I tell you, this movie is absolutely brutal. This is probably the most brutal, bloody, and goriest movie on the entire list. And I made a video not too long ago talking about my top 10 most disturbing movies, and I Saw the Devil just barely missed the list. This thing probably would have been my number 11. It is gnarly. But luckily, the brutality and the blood and guts are packaged within a really compelling story with really good characters. This is another revenge story. It's got kind of a cat and mouse element to it. It's very thrilling and suspenseful. It's got a really solid story. The performances are top-notch, and I may be as bold as to say that Min-sik Choi's performance in this rivals his performance in Oldboy. He's really solid. So, yeah, I Saw the Devil. Top-notch stuff. Check it out. Coming in at number 7 is Manhunter. This came out in 1986. It was directed by Michael Mann, and this is based on the novel The Red Dragon by Thomas Harris. This tells the story of former FBI profiler Will Graham, who returns to service to pursue a deranged serial killer dubbed the Tooth Fairy by the media. Brian Cox plays Dr. Hannibal Lecter in this, but the highlight for me here is Tom Noonan, who plays the Tooth Fairy killer, and let me tell you, his performance in this is so unsettling and so creepy, but man, it is fantastic. If you're a fan of Silence of the Lambs, you can't go wrong with this. It's got everything you could want in it for a serial killer, murder mystery, police procedural type movie. It's just awesome. Coming in at number 6 is Memories of Murder. This is directed by Bong Joon-ho, who you may know directed the film Parasite, and it also stars Song Kang-ho, who is in Parasite as well. And this one is based on the true story. It's set in 1986 in a small Korean province and follows 2 detectives who struggle with the case of multiple young women being found assaulted and murdered by an unknown culprit. And I just rewatched this again the other day. It'd been quite a while since I'd seen it, and man, it is really, really solid. It starts off, the first half of the movie really kind of subverts your expectations, as you're pretty shocked and surprised at how terrible and incompetent these lead investigators and detectives are into this case. But then it really kind of turns a corner almost in the second half of the movie, and the dramatic and emotional depth that this thing hits you with is like a ton of bricks. Man, it really resonates. It packs a punch. It's got really solid performances, tells just a really compelling story that is based on a true story. So if you like true crime, definitely check this one out. And it really just gets into the mystery and the clues and the details of the case. And it has kind of some more depth to it about their society and the things that they were going through and experiencing in South Korea during this time, and just some of the horrible injustices that actually occurred within the justice system. And I won't spoil it, but the ending of this movie, man, the final shot has seared itself into my brain. I will never ever forget it. It's just fantastic. If you haven't seen Memories of Murder, what are you doing? Go check it out. Next up at number 5 is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and this is the original from 2009, the Swedish-Danish version. And I do really like David Fincher's version. I think it is also really solid, but I saw the original one first, so this was my initial exposure to the story, and so this one just kind of resonated and hit me a little bit harder than the remake. And this tells the story of a journalist who is sighted by a young female hacker in his search for the killer of a woman who has been dead for 40 years. And this is just simply put a fantastic murder mystery with some deeply upsetting and disturbing elements to it. Noomi Rapace creates just a great and memorable character with Elizabeth Salander, who has just, not only is she a memorable character, but just her look alone is something you'll never forget. Her performance is also really solid. And I also really like that this one it's a murder mystery and investigation from an investigative journalist instead of a police officer. And so it kind of just hits a little bit different of an angle, but man, the web that is spun in this one and all the stuff that they have to go through and all the layers that they have to peel back. Just a really solid story with really good characters, and also a really memorable and great ending as well. So that's why Girl with the Dragon Tattoo sits at number 5. Coming in at number 4 is Cure. This is a film that I've done a pretty thorough review for on my channel already, but this is a fantastic film. This is a Japanese film that came out in 1997, was directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa, and it tells the story of a frustrated detective who deals with the case of several gruesome murders committed by people who have no recollection of what they've done. This is definitely more of a slow burn, slower paced film, but I think it's better for that. I love the presentation of it. It has just some gorgeous camera work and cinematography. The central mystery to the movie is very engaging and very interesting. And this one too has, I think, quite a bit of depth to it. There's definitely some thought-provoking stuff going on here as it really tries to explore a little bit of human nature and the nature of evil. And so there's definitely some more stuff here beneath the surface. And if there's one word I could use to describe this, it would be haunting. There's just some very haunting and unsettling and creepy and eerie scenes and imagery that just stick with you and have a lasting impression. I think Cure is a little bit different. It is by no means a standard kind of straightforward murder mystery, but I think it's the differences in sort of the unconventional approach to it that make it so great. So Cure, can't recommend highly enough. That is why it is my number 4. All right, next up at number 3 is The Silence of the Lambs. And you probably figured it would be on here since I mentioned it earlier, but how can it not be? It's a great movie. There's not really much I can say about it that hasn't been said before. It's got fantastic characters with Jodie Foster's Clarice Starling, and of course, Anthony Hopkins he's Anthony Hopkins. What could I say that hasn't been said about Hannibal Lecter? He's fantastic. He's iconic. It's one of the greatest villains ever put to screen. He's utterly captivating. But also, too, Ted Levine, who plays Buffalo Bill, is pretty darn good as well, and very memorable and disturbing. And I feel like he kind of gets outshined a little bit by Anthony Hopkins, which, fair enough, but I think Buffalo Bill deserves a mention as well because Ted Levine's performance in this is awesome as well. Great characters, so many just memorable and iconic scenes. You got Hopkins with the face mask. I mean, there's really nothing about this movie that doesn't work. It's a great mystery. It's disturbing. It's compelling. It's interesting and engaging. It's whatever word you want to use. Like I said, there's nothing I can really say that hasn't been said already. And if for some crazy chance you haven't seen it, go watch it right now. Next up at number 2 is Seven, starring Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, directed by one of my all-time favorites, and that is David Fincher. This came out in 1995, tells the story of a serial killer who is targeting victims and is decorating the crime scene in line with the 7 deadly sins. And man, I can't imagine there's probably too many of you watching this who haven't seen Seven, but if you haven't, my goodness, stop what you're doing right now, I don't care what it is, and go watch it, because it's an all-timer. It is one of the very best films ever made. It's one of my all-time favorites. The production design in this, just the look and the production value and the cinematography is just so amazing. It's just dirty and gritty and grungy, but it's just fantastic. The performances and the characters by Pitt and Freeman are great. Their sort of on-screen chemistry and just how they play off of each other is really solid as well. The mystery is extremely engaging and interesting and very disturbing. This is an interesting one too because you don't really see any kills. All you do is see the aftermath of the kills, and my goodness, are they messed up. This has, I think, one of the best jump scares of all time with the sloth victim. And of course, it has one of the very best, maybe my personal favorite, twist ending of all time that is absolutely devastating. And what I love about this is that it starts off like a serial killer murder mystery and then delves into the deepest depths of horror by the very end of it. I can't say enough good things about it. Seven. My number 2. And that takes me to number 1. And my number 1 favorite serial killer movie of all time is Zodiac. This is another one directed by David Fincher. This came out in 2007 and stars Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo, and Robert Downey Jr., and it is based on the actual true killings of the Zodiac Killer that plagued the San Francisco area in the late 60s and early 70s, and they never caught him. Man, this is not just my favorite serial killer movie, but this is genuinely probably in my top 10, maybe even top 5 of all time. I adore this movie. I can't ever watch it enough. And what makes this my number one is just how obsessed this film is with the details and the evidence and the clues. And all that stuff is just so fascinating to me. You really feel like you're the investigator, like you're the detective when you watch this movie. And we really kind of see it through the eyes of Jake Gyllenhaal's character as he becomes obsessed with the case. We're right there with him. And it's just so interesting. It's got one of my most favorite horror, suspenseful movie scenes of all time when he is in the basement looking for the movie poster. Awesome scene. I actually did a little video of it, breaking it down on my channel, but I could just talk about this all day. I love it. The mystery aspect, all the details, just the look of the film too, and the cinematography is great. It just captures that time and era so well. It just feels so real and authentic, and I absolutely love it. Like I said, it's one of my very, very most favorite movies of all time. I could watch it forever and ever. This would be like a desert island movie for me. I just love it. So that is why Zodiac is my number one favorite serial killer movie of all time. So that concludes this list. Thank you so much for watching, but please hit me up down below. I want to know what your list is. Let me know about some of your favorite serial killer movies. Also, give me some recommendations. I haven't seen every single one. I'm always looking for new movies to watch, so would appreciate you letting me know in the comments down below. That's all I got for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time on The Haunted Beard.